In this episode,
What is the value of art?
And I was just so much happy. My job is really demonstrating and showing the value of our soul development. It's so easy to get stuck in like a stress loop. In the choir class, there's a sense of community and belonging, de-stress while achieving something, rather than constantly associating stress with achievement.
Yeah, we talk about growth mindset all the time, but it's really good to have like some growth experience.
The greatest predictor of student success is.
good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Fantastic. Well, we are back and we have another very special guest, Ingrid Gerling, Dr. G, as we call her here at school, who's our amazing vocal music and choir teacher. That's what you're doing now, but maybe you could just introduce yourself a little bit and maybe talk about the road that brought you to school.
Sure. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been a long journey. I think, since I was born, I have loved music, and both my parents were musicians, so I think it was somewhat inescapable, although my sisters escaped, but I didn't. And started young playing. I played recorder for a really long time, like 10 some years, and I played violin. Of course, I always sang. Um, and then when it was time to pick college, I actually did architecture.
Okay.
Yeah, and I thought, no, I'm not going to major in music. But I met a teacher who heard me playing, and he offered to bring me to the United States to do music. And so I took him up on that offer, and I was just so much happier. I liked architecture, and I was um, doing well in that, but I just felt such a like natural calling to do music, and I felt really at peace about that choice. And it was very hard. I mean, being a music major is a lot of work.
It really is.
It's just hours and hours of uncounted work, when you're in the practice room. And it's a very vulnerable major because it's really all about your like soul, learning how to harness your soul and putting that into an instrument or into your voice. It's 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 such a difficult thing to do, but it's very satisfying, obviously. And um, you really can't hide behind
Right.
anything. You can't hide behind, I don't know, spreadsheets, whatever. It's you in the audience,
Yeah.
and you have to get comfortable with what you have to show. So that has been the central part of the journey, I think, regardless of what instrument I'm playing. So yeah, so I did violin and voice in my undergrad, and then I did violin and voice in my master's, and then I continued doing that, and then I added conducting in my doctorate. So I did violin, voice, and conducting. And conducting, I really enjoyed that too. And after I graduated with my doctorate, started conducting a couple orchestras, and that was really successful, really fulfilling, and kind of, I was doing that in a university setting, so it really combined my like love of teaching and my love of performing and my love of helping people, because as a conductor, you kind of become everyone's
Yeah.
guide,
Right.
So that was really fun for me, and I learned a lot. And um, what has been interesting for me is always just trying to um, accept that I just love to do many things, because when I was growing up, people would say, well, you can't play trombone and guitar and flute and recorder and violin and sing. And I was like, watch me.
Yeah.
And I mean, I admittedly was not very good at the trombone. But I just had such an interest, and I really wanted to try everything. And it felt like everything was a valid way of expression. And so I didn't want to give up any tool for expression. I wanted to learn more. So I think now here at Audi, it's just like a different step to like showing the students here almost kind of like how to learn how to do that
Right,
too.
kind of given that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what you just said there resonates with different pieces that we've been focusing on in the podcast. And I think one of the themes that we'd like to explore with you is, we've talked about, okay, what's it like to be in a very achievement oriented, exacting, demanding, challenging environment, and so you're doing all that creative work, all that vulnerable work inside of that
Mhm.
cauldron or that container. How do you approach that? Like, what's going on? What how are you doing that?
I love that this is a high achieving environment because at the end of the day, you can be a high achiever in any area. But generally speaking, if you have the mindset of pushing yourself to your highest potential, you're going to want to apply that to all the areas in your life. So it's very rare to see someone who's like, oh, yeah, all I care about is a math test. Almost nobody's going to say, I only care about getting a good grade in math. They're going to say, I want to be, really good at math, really good at science, really good at history, really good at music, really good at this. I mean, the overall feeling is that they just want to excel. And I think showing, like, my job is really demonstrating and showing the value of art and of that, soul development because they already have the desire to excel. And so combining that with me showing like, what about excelling in this area? It hasn't really been difficult to convince them. They already have the spirit of
The hunger.
the hunger to achieve. So I think my job has been showing them that that is another area that
Right.
exists that they can excel in and the benefits that they see in their, own life from excelling in those things.
Yeah, can you talk about that a little bit more? The value of art, right? So in a lot of school systems, a lot of educational settings, art is kind of marginalized, or it's sort of, it's the first thing to go. What is the value of art?
Thanks so much. You know, I actually recently was showing them a video about music and the brain, and that this there's benefits to art that are very palpable and physical and demonstrable, and then there are other benefits that you just feel, right? That nobody can really measure. So starting with the ones that you can actually measure, we were watching a movie about neurological studies that they've done on people who study music and art and generally use their creativity, but specifically with music, and it was showing that um, musicians, just from the act of having to involve so many areas of their brain from an early age, because we have to involve the creative side, but also the logical side, the exacting side, the coordination. We have to, involve so many areas just to perform one task that it creates a significantly larger amount of neurological connections. So a child that grows up doing music eventually ends up just having a lot more of brain
Like brain
connections.
power,
Yeah,
brain
brain
capacity.
power, exactly. So that's one of the greatest benefits. I think it's similar to, people who learn multiple languages, and that's also pretty well known. So I think that's one of the, measurable benefits of doing music. But from the other side, um, I find that in this environment of high achievement, it's so easy to get stuck in like a stress loop.
Right.
Even when you have breaks, it's like your body is accustomed to being stressed and it doesn't really have the practice of releasing, and it doesn't have the um, the knowledge of how to de-stress. And so things like practicing mindfulness teach you that. And I think that's super valuable. A lot of times when you're stressed, even when you don't have to do something and you are allowed to not be stressed anymore, you're so used to being stressed that your body doesn't know how to
Right. We're just like
de-stress.
all on all the
Yeah,
time.
and
Yeah.
it's almost like you make up things to be stressed about because you're just in that routine of like, I gotta get this done, I have to study for this. And so I find that choir and the arts in general, they give your mind and your body the knowledge of how to, do something, but with like a positive mindset. So it doesn't have to be like you're teaching your mind how to de-stress while achieving something rather than constantly associating stress with achievement. So you don't have to be stressed to get something done. And a lot of times I think we associate like, oh, I have to get this done. I have to get this done. And here it's like, I get to do this. I'm so excited that I get to do this. And we still have pretty rigorous things we need to get. They have to memorize a lot of music in different languages. They have to, do a lot of rehearsing. They have to memorize all their notes. They don't get to read the music during the performance. I'm quizzing them on the notes, but it's done in such a like happy, positive way that I think they come here and they say, "Oh, I can relax." But they're still getting stuff done. It's not like we're relaxing and we're just doing nothing. We're relaxing while getting a lot of stuff done. And I think that's a really important skill to learn because nobody needs to spend their whole life stressed. You learning how to get through life without being stressed is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I mean, you've articulated what the future vision of a new community, a new school could be that we can achieve and not be stressed.
Yeah.
That model is not serving us anymore.
The word that was coming up for me in there was also agency, right? This sort of, I'm stressed and I'm achieving, but I'm achieving for somebody else, right? Or for some other condition. And then, as you were talking, I was thinking about, yeah, the performance is the thing. And I can feel agency in that, in that performance just because of it, right?
Yeah.
And not because of something that's going to happen down the road.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that happen in the choir class. There's a sense of community and belonging, but there's also a sense of individual responsibility to that group. So we talk a lot about like, yes, you're in a group, but if one person is singing like all the wrong notes, it brings the whole group down. So there is still a sense of shared responsibility, but individual responsibility as well. And I think, I try very much to keep it a stress-free environment. Um, it helps that they enjoy it, but I think everything can be enjoyable. You just have to see the value in it. So I know that like when I was growing up, I was very academically oriented. I had to get straight A's. I mean, it was a very important thing for me. So I relate to them very much because I don't think, oh, well, you're never going to use this quadratic equation or whatever. I mean, it's still important to learn. And I really value all of the academics. So I think that's one more reason why I'm so big on helping them achieve things without being stressed because they will excel more in the academics the more they learn about, I can study without worrying. And a big part of that is developing your self-esteem.
Right.
So maybe we can touch on that a little bit because I think music, it develops your self-esteem so much. There's something so powerful about seeing your progress over the course of a year, coming in and thinking, oh, I don't know how to read music. I don't feel confident about singing. I'm kind of embarrassed about what my friends are going to say. And then at the end of the year, putting on a show where you memorized everything, you learned all the music, you're singing in tune, your friends think you're amazing because you're so talented, and there's such a shift in
Right.
that. And so the growth of like, wow, like I applied myself and I discovered that I'm capable of doing something really cool and I had fun doing it, that's such a big like self-esteem builder.
Right. Yeah, we talk about growth mindset all the time, but it's really good to have like some growth experience,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I know I'm a big proponent of growth mindset and I do sometimes have students who are not, maybe they don't have as much experience with singing, and I make it a mission to really highlight to them, like, look at all the progress you've made because they maybe don't make as much progress as quickly as other peers, but for what they came in with, they're making so much progress. And I think that's something that's also unique to the arts because in math, or science, I keep using math, but any other thing, it's like if you didn't come in at this level, you're behind. And then if you don't leave at this level, you're behind. And so I like being able to show the students that you're not behind here. You're on a journey and you're going to start here, and other people maybe have more experience, but just pay attention to how much you're growing. And they see at the end of the year, like I've grown so much, and that's why they want to keep doing it because they feel proud of themselves. They should. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, we're blessed by it, right?
Yeah.
The karmic wheel spun in our favor. Remember, after after the pop show, which was amazing, a couple of weeks ago, one of the parents asked me, "Hey, what did you think of the show?" And I was like, "Well, on my tombstone, it's going to say found Ingrid." Just like it just where there were so many, just so many levels of it, the individual piece and that. I mean, I'm interested in that. Maybe you could talk about that a little more because that yoking, that managing of the individual within the collective seems like a big deal. Yeah.
I mean, organizing the pop show, it's a little stressful.
Yeah.
I just said I didn't
Yeah.
want to be stressed, but can't help it all
We
the
can
time.
stress you.
That's because you care about it so much.
No, I do. I care about it a lot, and there is a lot of like, um, at that time of the year, there's so much going on that you do have to kind of Tetris around kids'
Yes.
schedules and stuff, and that's kind of challenging. But what I love about the pop show, it's not that, I get to work with the students. And last year, same thing. It's like I want to get a sense of where they are at, right? And I also want to teach them something about where the world is at. So the topic that we used with, change, songs of change, um, that's my way of kind of inspiring them to connect with their surroundings, connect with your peers. Let's see what is important to each person. Why did so and so pick that song? Why did they feel like that song is important to them? And let's talk about what the song means. Um, and then let's come together and talk about like the song that we're all singing together. So we were all brainstorming, on songs that would work for this topic, and they had to bring me like 3 or 4 choices that they were interested in, and we would talk about like maybe this one is a better choice or that one. And I what I loved about it is that I was guiding them, and of course I picked a lot of the repertoire, but they got to participate with me. And there is such a sense of ownership in that because they didn't just get to, be a part of the repertoire process, but they are the ones who executed it. And so, I typically, I guess, conductors will stand in front of the ensemble and then, take all of the recognition. And I'm okay with that and maybe in like a more classical setting, but when we do a lot of our performances, I really love to just let them kind of be there. I don't like to be in front of them because I feel like my job is really to get them to that point. Almost like a parent's job is to get their kid to be self-sufficient and independent. So I don't want to have to be like a crutch for them. My job is to make them so secure in the music and so prepared that they feel like they can do it on their own. And so I think that's another great experience for them, is just feeling like we own this, and the pop show is a great place where they get to do that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in that what you just said, because for sure, in my experience of looking at different kind of vocal music programs, sometimes it can be very conductor centric, and it's sort of a big performative piece there. And I love how you do step to the side there. It's a moment of humility, but it's also giving that real space for them to take it and own it.
You're teaching them to shine, encouraging them to shine, and then you're getting out of the way so they can be seen and shine and be brilliant. And if you were standing in front, it would be kind of.
Yeah, and I mean, I recognize that I put a lot of work into getting them to that point, but I also have my own things outside where I get to be center stage,
Right.
So I don't feel the need to use their moment as my moment. I in life have had a lot of moments on
Yeah.
my own, and I continue to be able to do that. And so I want them to experience, like, what does this feel like? And that's one of the reasons why we have so many solos input into, that when we do the solos, it's quite a bit of work for me because I'm coaching them on the solos individually outside of class. So it's like, would be easier maybe to just have like group numbers and we're just doing it in class time. But I see so much value in, taking maybe a really shy student who hasn't had any performance experience, but who has an incredible voice, and saying, "Hey, I really think you can do a solo. Why don't you give it a go?" And no, I don't want to. I don't want to be in front of everybody. I'm embarrassed. Blah, blah. And just being like, why don't you try just in front of the class? Why don't you try in front of this other class? And then why don't you try at the dress rehearsal?
One thing at a time.
You'll have lots of, trying experiences, um, and then finally seeing them, lose the hesitation and lose the fear mid-performance is just so satisfying.
Yeah.
Seeing them literally grow before my eyes is incredible.
Yeah, they just grab that moment,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah. And then they have this sense of like, I did it. And only that individual knows what they overcame, because they can try to voice it for me a lot. They can say, I feel nervous, my hands are sweating, my heart is beating, but I'm not feeling what they're feeling. I mean, I have empathy for it because I've felt it many times before, but only they know. I just like was able to experience this horrible feeling of stage fright or anxiety or whatever. I was able to overcome that and perform, and people liked it. So there's this like validation of, oh yeah, I can do this. So
Yeah.
that's something that's, I mean, I guess if you're studying for a test and you're normally not doing very well and you study really hard and then you get a really good grade, that's a similar feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not really like a sense of public validation to that. It's more of like okay, I'm not going to fail this class kind of, whereas I feel like when you do the performance in the choir, it leaves you with this feeling of like, I can't wait to do it again. When's the next performance? Which is what they ask me. Whereas I don't think many kids go like, when's the next test?
Yeah, probably not.
They're just like, oh, now I can rest, right?
Yeah.
So that's another, I think, great advantage of music. It's just like this thing, like love that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
It's like a hamster wheel of like good things.
Yeah.
You're like,
it's a feedback loop.
Yeah.
Whenever the student can see the audience in awe and celebrating them and just like being moved and touched by the pieces, that feedback loop can't be replaced by anything, really.
Yeah. And then, that one of our themes is community, right? And that audience piece is, community is getting built in that audience. There's a give and take with that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I was so impressed. I mean, the families and the kids really came together to support their peers and their kids, and that's so vital. I mean, it's totally different to perform for like a theater that has like 10 people versus 200 people. It's a big difference. So I was very happy with the turnout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of a turnout, and also just the way people were experiencing it
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
It's a huge one. Hey, the title of our podcast is The Yoga of School,
Uh-huh.
and it kind of means different things to different people. What's that phrase mean to you?
Okay, the first thing that comes to mind is flexibility. And I know yoga has a lot of facets and, a lot of aspects that go into it. Um, but I think flexibility to like change and evolve. I mean, yoga is like a practice that you don't expect to be good at overnight. And I think having this mindset of like, first, no school is ever going to be perfect, right? But I think having this mindset of like um, practicing growth as a school and like evolving and changing, I think that's kind of what it makes me think of because I don't know, I do feel like Audie does that, like constantly kind of self-reflecting as a school. Um, but yeah, I think that flexibility is the first thing that comes to mind.
That's awesome. We hadn't got that one yet.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
yeah. I mean, there's obviously the moving to sort of some degree of physical flexibility, but then it's really the mental, I think, like heart flexibility that I hear you talking about.
Yeah. And definitely, I mean, the self-reflection part is, I think, really important because you don't grow without the self-reflection, right? You can change, things can change, but I don't think you experience growth until you self-reflect and make a conscientious choice to move in one direction or another. And I think that's a really big practice.
Yeah, that that reflection is the fuel for the growth. Yeah. There's a rumor out there that next year we're going to do Greece. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So talk about that, because that's you with Mr.
Bauman.
coming together. Yeah. Just kind of put that on the table for us. What that's going to look like.
That's gonna look like a musical.
Yeah.
Should I break out in song right now? Yeah, we're gonna have. It's gonna be, similar to the plays that we've done, but there's just gonna be a lot more singing,
Yes.
obviously. And so once the cast is selected through the audition, we're gonna have a lot of after-school rehearsals for them to learn the songs, and I think it's gonna sound really good. I don't know who the cast is gonna be because they didn't do the auditions yet. But the songs are amazing. I mean, I love Grease.
Absolutely.
I'm
Grew up
definitely
on
like,
it.
exactly. So tell me more. Tell me more. Right? I think it's gonna be it's a very fun experience, and hopefully another opportunity for some of our really talented singers who don't have a lot of acting experience to maybe get thrown in the fire. Is that how you say it? Like to do a little acting and kind of like get out of their box a little. I was talking to Mr. Bauman about maybe bringing in a clinician that can do some like a dance body movement workshop with all the singers and theater kids, because the theater kids don't necessarily have to sing, but the singers really do have to act at least a little bit. Nobody wants to see somebody singing like that. So I thought it would be so beneficial for us to do kind of like a combo class.
Yes.
Where a clinician comes and does some body movement, kind of, what are some happy movements? What are some sad movements?
Yeah.
How do you translate what you're singing or what you're acting into your movement? So I think it's really good to have that theater choir collaboration, because even though they're very different, they also share a lot of the similar
Yeah.
traits.
Is there something when you, I mean, we all kind of, we know what a musical is, been seen a musical, but what, when you bring those disciplines together, what is the special sauce in that for you anyway? You know, like why? Because it's a huge time commitment. You know, it's obviously much harder, I think, than doing a strictly theater thing or a strictly musical thing. So what is it that makes you engage that level of challenge?
Well, I think the narrative is something that's really different for the singers, because, usually a song is, like, for example, we did the pop show. It had a theme, but this variety of the songs was,
Yeah.
that was all over the place, as long as it had to do with that theme. But with the musical, you're learning like kind of similar songs in the same style. I mean, it's not going to
Yes.
be, a wildly different style within the show, but they are all kind of giving a narrative. And because we are actively telling a story with our singing, it's part of the lines of the show, basically, right? So it's kind of like opera,
Mhm.
Yeah, different stuff.
but pop, I
Yeah.
guess. And so the acting component becomes so much more important for the singers, because, normally if you're singing a song, you can just kind of get into your own character of that. So, like, normally if I'm singing a song about love, me, Ingrid, I have love experiences, and those are valid. So I can just sing about that. I can tap into my own experience about that and I can sing. But if I'm playing a different character, like if I'm Sandy, then I can't really use my own experiences. I have to imagine what would be Sandy's experiences, right? And so it's another layer of study, another layer of creativity, another layer that you have to add into how you sing. Maybe your voice is going to change a little bit. If Sandy has a different type of voice, if she's shy, then you can't just be belting your songs. You're going to have to adapt the way of how you sing everything to sell that character, right? So I think that's going to be really like exciting for them, because it's something like you get to pretend you're somebody else
Right.
and sing, and I think that's kind of fun,
There's such an empathetic and emotional
Yeah.
depth to that.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Kids being willing, you know, they're already good at one of the functions or confident in one of the functions, but yeah, being willing to take on that extra layer as well, you know, wanting to take that on, I think is huge versus fearing it, right?
I think I predict we're going to have some kids who will actually be emboldened by the fact that they get to pretend they're somebody else.
Yeah.
Because that vulnerability piece that I was talking about earlier, it's really present when you're singing a solo and you're, you. Okay, I'm Ingrid, this is what I have to offer. But if I can pretend that I'm somebody else, then it's almost like I have this excuse to give more, because people aren't judging me, they're judging that character, right? So I predict that there will be some surprise confidence popping up through the musical because
That's
of
gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
So you're a mom, right?
Yes.
How precious. How young is your child?
He's 2 years and 8 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you think about the future that he has in front of him with education and the arts, what would you, if you could design your own thing for him, what would that be? You know, not to pigeonhole him at all, right? But to create an environment that would be the most supportive for the future. Well, what does that look like in your eyes?
Just for the arts or for school in general?
Both. You know, if there's a way to.
Well, it's hard to say, like, specifically for my own kid, because he's so young. It's almost like I'm still getting to know him. He's very smart. And
Big surprise.
but he speaks 3 languages now, and he loves music, and he bosses me around in 3 languages. So I really can't escape it. But I think, I think, regardless of what education looks like in the future, for me, there's always going to be the underlying thing that's the most important, which is the connection that teachers have with their students. So, regardless of the format of school, I feel like the most important, and probably for me, like what I believe in, is the greatest predictor of student success is feeling like the teacher cares about them. And so I know, like from my past experience in, school, that the subjects that I did the least well on, I felt like that teacher didn't care about me. And maybe that's something that shouldn't matter, but personally felt like it mattered. And I can only imagine that a lot of kids feel that way, because if you don't care about me or how I'm doing, why should I listen to what you have to say, right? And kids are kids. No matter how mature they are, they're going to have this kind of visceral response to, like, if you care about me, I care about you. If you disrespect me, then I disrespect you. They're not going to be like, well, this is for my own good. I really need to be. I mean, they're not going to think like that. So I think regardless of the format of what school looks like in the future, whether it's, block periods, or it's school outside, or it's school 3 times a week, or it's, no homework, or, like, regardless of all of those things, if we have teachers, then we need to have connection. That's what I think. Um, the kids here in my class, I think that they grow a lot, and I think that they are willing to do so much, like, after school stuff, because they know that I care so much about them, and they, in a way, they don't want to let me down. They say, like, guys, let's not disappoint Dr. G or whatever. But I care so much about their own development and their own growth, and I think they see that. I'm not telling them, like, you need to practice, otherwise you're gonna suck. Nobody's saying that. I'm saying you should practice because you have all this potential that I'm seeing in you, and you're gonna sound amazing if you just put a little bit of effort into it. And they connect to that. And I think that would always be the most important, is just the relationship between students and teachers. If there's support, if there's connection, then it doesn't really matter what subject you're teaching or how you're teaching it or how long or where. I think then there's going to be, like, a desire for that collaboration.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that. And I mean, we're in a school, I think, that's always really valued that relationship piece. I think that's one of its strengths. But some of the discourse out there in the education space, as modalities like AI can also be providing the content and some of the content.
Right.
I'm not sure can really provide what you've been talking about, but who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
But then what's the role of the adult? And it
Right.
moves to that guiding place, or that mentoring place, which I think there's a lot of power in that. And I think, it exists in the current model, but this kind of unlocks even more, I think, right? So I will sort of see what's coming. Lots of change out there.
Do you guys have to go?
We're a couple minutes, yeah.
I think having a kid shows you, like, just how much little kids are observing, because literally I can say anything and he will just copy it exactly, you know? And so that maybe has raised my awareness, because we think that they're only doing that when they're really little, but they're doing that the whole time they're here in school. And so if we realize that, whether AI takes over and AI is teaching them subjects and things like that, AI can't teach them how to be good human beings.
Right.
It really can't, unless we program it to do that. And I think it is such a big component of school as a community, that they're going to learn by watching the teachers. They're going to They're going to learn to be respectful by seeing respectful teachers. They're going to learn to be kind by seeing kind teachers. They're going to learn to be understanding by seeing understanding teachers. If you have teachers who just yell at them or say, be quiet or whatever, then they are going to incorporate it.
That's what's getting modeled.
Right.
Yeah. And whether you say, don't yell, and then you yell at them, they're probably going to yell, so I think people really downplay, or maybe just teachers themselves, they don't realize how huge of an impact they have on kids. Maybe they think, oh, well, I don't really care about little Johnny or whatever, so they don't care about what I do. But all the kids here are in some way, even the troublemakers or whatever, they're all in some way looking for a connection.
Mm-hmm.
I know one of the questions on the survey was, do you feel like one adult knows you well, at least, But what if what if you felt like every teacher cared about you? That's when we're going to see every kid really, booming in their growth. That's my philosophy. I don't know, maybe it's too idealistic.
Yeah. It's a wrap. I mean, just what you just said right there. Yeah, that is perfect.
Absolutely beautiful. Can't thank you enough for sharing and being so graceful.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we'll let you know when those Greece tickets are available. That'll be a little while from now, but that's going to be amazing.
It'll be really fun.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Dr. G.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Namaste.
Namaste.